starring Bela Day in...
But Ma, that's my favorite movie. Oh, well, all right. But don't you spend too much time in front of that TV, do you hear me? Yes, Ma. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of my podcast, But Ma, that's my favorite movie. And I'm your host, Bela Day. Now, if you are a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. You are a real one, period. If you are a new listener, well, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in, and you are definitely in for a treat today. Now, before we get into this episode and, get into all the good stuff, I wanted to address something that I didn't do in the previous episode. So in episode 10, But Ma, That's Gone with the Wind, I had mentioned the movie I was going to do in the next episode, which would have been episode 11. I said we were going to do the movie Mean Girls. Now, if you listen to episode 11, I talked about the movie Tank Girl. I didn't address that I had changed what movie I was going to do because when I was doing the episode, I was kind of rushing it, and I completely forgot to tell y'all that, hey, yeah, I'm doing a different movie instead. So, my bad. But yeah, so I am going to do Mean Girls, but it's going to be on a different day. And if you know anything about the Mean Girls movie, you should have a good idea of possibly what day I'm going to do it on. But we're definitely just going to save that for another episode. But I wanted to clarify that in this episode, before we got any further. So if you did have any questions about it, you can know what happened there. All right. So today's episode is titled, But Ma, That's My Favorite Kid in a Movie. So it's pretty self-explanatory. We're just going to talk about movies that star children. And I'm going to share some of my favorite movies, just like I do with every other theme episode. Movies that I really enjoy that star children. And of course, these are some children that are super ambitious, smart, adventurous, everything you look for in a family-friendly movie that's starring a child. And these are movies that I remember when I was younger that I wished I was them. I wished I was doing the things that they were doing, because typically in these kind of movies, the kids are pretty independent. And it's funny because sometimes you hardly see the parents in the movie, of course, because the plot is focused around the kids, but they get to, go on these different adventures, and they get to just do everything you wish as a kid you got to do. Because when you're a child, you always wish to be an adult because you think you have all these privileges. But with all of the fun and, independent, situations that you can be in, there also comes a lot of responsibility with being able to do all of that. And as you get older, of course, you learn that. Because as kids, I just remember always, when I was 12, I wanted to be 13. And when I was 13, I wanted to be 15. When I was 15, I wanted to be 16. And when I was 16, I wanted to be 18. And, you're always wishing to be older and older because you think you're just going to have, more and more fun. And, you just want that independence to be able to do whatever you want. Because, of course, our parents show us the glamour side of being an adult. But, when I had parents that I had no idea about, when parents complained about, don't keep all the lights on, or, eating up all the food and stuff, you think, like, what's the big deal? But you don't realize there's a grocery bill, there's the electricity bill, where you're living, you got to pay rent, you got to pay for gas in your car. So it's just like all these, you have the freedom, but there's a lot of stipulations to go along with it, right? So I felt this theme was very necessary for this time, just because of the fact that kids are going back to school, right? Like, it's felt like a pretty long year. So it's felt like a long and short year at the same time. But this is the time where kids are going back to school. Now, granted, we're in a totally different space in a different time than we normally are because kids are virtually going to school versus, getting dressed up and meeting the teachers and, just everything that we're used to life being like. It's different. Now, I know some schools are letting kids come in person, and then some schools are doing it virtually for only a certain amount of time because, let's be real, a lot of parents can't afford to not go to work or to have their kids just at home on a Zoom meeting. People, most of the time people can't leave their kids at home to do that and to fend for themselves. So it's very inconvenient for some parents for sure, especially if both of the parents are working, because not everybody can afford to have a parent to stay at home. We got some bills. Bills are expensive. Bills is not cheap. Like I said, that's what you learn when you become an adult, And so, even with all that being said, this is school time, going back to school. I thought this would be a really fun theme for my listeners, and also for me, because of course I picked these episodes that I know I'm gonna have fun actually doing. All right, so I want to do something a little bit different with you guys, and that is I want to play a trivia game. So I am going to read off some questions and just test your knowledge to see, how knowledgeable you are with movies. All right, let's start with the first question here. So, who stars alongside Jennifer Lopez in The Wedding Planner? Do, 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 do. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to get the rhythm of it, guys. Okay. Do, 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 do. Do 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 do. All right, so the answer to that question is Matthew McConaughey. You know how he does his little accent. All right, so the next question. In what film do Cher, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Susan Sarandon star as witches? You know what? I actually bought this movie recently because I wanted to watch it. I've always seen the cover of it, but I'd never seen the movie. And I was always super curious because I've seen Cher movies. Well, I've seen all of them in movies. So I was just wondering, I was like, that looks really interesting. And it was okay. I don't know. Maybe I'll do that. I'll do that movie one day in one of the episodes. All right. So the answer is The Witches of Eastwick. All right. The next two questions that I have. What is the name of the fashion magazine that Jenna works for in 13 Going on 30? This is a movie I'm definitely going to do one day because it's definitely one of my favorites. I enjoy this movie. I can watch it over and over again. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. The answer is Poise. All right, last question. In which film does Zac Efron portray a 17-year-old version of Matthew Perry's character? Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I think I kind of messed it up, but oh well. All right, the answer is 17 again. All right, so that was 4 questions. Or hold on. Yeah, that was 4 questions. So how do you think you did? Did you get 1 right? Did you get 2? Did you get all 4? Well, if you got all 4, then congratulations. And your prize is, drum roll, you get to hear the rest of the episode. Yeah. So, guys, let me know what you think of playing that trivia game. I know it's kind of weird when I'm doing it like I'm just talking to the mic or whatever. But I thought maybe that'd be something fun. I like answering things even when I'm not, or I like playing games with people even if I'm not physically there. And hey, we're doing social distancing anyways, so we're just virtually playing this game. But comment, let me know what you think of that. If you think that's something that I should implement, maybe every other episode or something like that. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get right into these movies, okay? So with the first movie, lights, camera, action. I worked hard to steal that money, and you went and gave it to some zit-faced little kid? That quote is by the character Carl Quigley in the movie Blank Check. Now, this is a movie I kind of have looked over in the years. This is a movie I've kind of looked over in the years, and it wasn't until I was picking a movie until I came across this one, and I go, oh, wow, I forgot about this movie. And I watched it again, and I was like, oh, all the memories came back. I definitely remembered the movie. Okay, so this was released February 11th, 1994. It was released in my birthday month, and it has now reached its 26th anniversary. Can you believe that? 26 years ago, this movie came out. It's crazy that now all of the 90s babies are approaching their 30s. It's kind of freaking me out because I'm getting there. But, it's just a thing, and it's just life, All right, so the writers we have here are Blake Snyder and Kobe Carr. The director is Rupert Wainwright, and he directed The Fog as well. Then we have Brian Bonsall. I hope I'm saying that right. He plays Preston Waters. He also played in the show Family Ties and in the movie Mikey. Now, I believe he was more of a child actor. I don't think he did consistent work as an adult or maybe as like a preteen. So, yeah. Then we have Karen Duffy, who played Shay Stanley. She played in Dumber and Dumber and did a voice on Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I think that's one of my sister's favorite movies. And just like hearing that movie again, I definitely want to watch it. I think that's going to be the next movie I want to buy. We have James Rebhorn, who plays Fred Waters, the dad. He played in Independence Day and Scent of a Woman. We have Jane Atkins, who plays Sandra Waters, she's the mother. She was in Free Willy, The Village. We have Michael Faustino. He plays Ralph Waters, which is one of the brothers/sons. He was in The Monster Squad. We have Chris Demetral, who plays Damian Waters, another brother/son. He played in the horror movie Dolly Dearest. Now, I think that is one of like those obscure movies. I remember like it coming on cable when I was little, and seeing that again makes me want to watch it. And then we have Miguel, or it makes me want to watch it again. Then we have Miguel Ferrer. Not sure if I'm saying that right. Last name Ferre. He plays Quigley, which is who said the quote that I did. He was in Traffic and RoboCop. Then we have Michael Lerner, who plays Mr. Bitterman. He played in the 1998 version of Godzilla. Then we have Tone Loc, who plays Juice, and I know him from the movie Poetic Justice, and he's done some other movies, of course, but he is known as a rapper. We have Alex Zuckerman, who plays Butch, and we have Alex Morris, who plays Riggs, and he also played in Powder and Guess Who. We have Rick DeCalmon, who plays Henry, and he was also in Spaceballs, Groundhog's Day, the first Scary Movie. And then we have Debbie Allen, who plays Yvonne, and she was in Fame, that came out in 1980. Also was a recurring character on the show A Different World. Okay, so the movie starts off where we're seeing this prisoner, aka Quigley, who escapes from prison, and he makes his way back to the place where he had hid his money before he got locked up. Okay, so that's the opening. Then we get introduced to Preston, who is about to get his room taken over by his brothers because they have started a small business, and so now they need some office space. And along with them getting this office space, they're putting in computers and, just everything that they need or whatever. So, of course, Preston is upset by this because now he no longer has a space to himself because he has to share this with his brothers. To make matters worse, he has to go to this birthday party that is for one of his classmates named Butch, who basically teases him, but he's going to his party. And he really doesn't want to go because he knows he's not going to have enough money to really do anything. But somehow his parents are still forcing him to go. Now, I do understand the concept of, money management, being responsible with your money. But at the same time, why torture your kid and make them go somewhere if you don't feel like they need enough money to have fun? To at least go on, enough rides while they're there. Because the money that he gets, like, he can only go on the kiddie rides, and most of the time, like, the other rides, I guess they're the more expensive rides, the kids are just having a blast. They're, getting on whatever they want, doing wherever they want, and yet Preston is hanging back, just basically watching them have fun. And I would get it if he was adamant about going and didn't care about not having enough money, but the fact that he's like letting his dad know, like, I really don't want to go because I know y'all ain't got no money. And at one point, after he, has gotten home from the amusement park, he asked his parents, he goes, "Are we broke?" And his parents let him know, not necessarily, we are just paying close attention to our expenses. But as a kid, he's not really understanding what that all means. He just sees it as my parents are being frugal, and I don't get why, because we live in like this nice, decent house. We live in a decent, like a middle class neighborhood, maybe upper middle class neighborhood. So he's just not understanding it. Now, in order to make him feel better, his mom gives him one of his birthday cards early, which is from his grandma. Now, everyone knows when you get money from grandma that there's going to be some cash in there. So as soon as he gets the card, he opens it up, he shakes it to see if there's any money that's going to fall out, and a check falls out. Now, when he looks at the check, he's upset because he's like, it's blank. And so the dad looks at it and he goes, "Oh, well, she signed it, but, she probably forgot to put an amount. So we can just write that in." And he asks his wife, "Well, what did she give him last year?" And the mom was like, $10. And then as the dad's writing it down, Preston is like, "Don't forget inflation." So the dad goes, "Oh, yeah, we'll make it $11. And so, Preston, of course, is disappointed because he wants more money than that. But he ends up getting the $11. So now, fast forward, we see Quigley again, and he goes up to this bank that is owned by this man named Edward Bitterman. Okay? Now, he goes up to his bank because he actually needs a favor from this man, because Bitterman actually testified against Quigley, and he's part of the reason why he got sent off to prison. So now he's back. He has this money. He knows this guy who works at this bank. So the money is actually marked. It's like consecutive bills. And so Quigley's basically like, "Well, you owe me a favor because of what you did to me. So yes, this money is no good, but since you work at a bank, I'm going to need you to replace these bills, or basically give me bills that are actually legit." And he goes, "Well, I'm going to give you 24 hours to do this. And after 24 hours, I'm going to have my dude, Juice, come over. He's going to pick up the money. Give you enough time to, get all that money situated." So on the same day, Preston goes to the bank to try to create an account so he can deposit his $11. Because, he's ready to grow up. He's ready to put his money in the bank, try to be a little responsible as a little kid. He cannot open a bank account because that's not enough money. You have to have more than that. So once again disappointed, Preston leaves the bank, but as he's leaving the bank, Butch, who he went to his birthday party, is riding by him and snatches the check out of his hand. So then Preston goes on this chase and he's trying to, chase after Butch to get his check back. Now, as he's chasing after him, he ends up spinning out on his bike and he lands behind this car. Now, whose car do you think he landed behind? Quigley's. Quigley had left the bank as well. He was getting into his car. As he's backing out, Preston's laying there with his bike. So Quigley ends up running over the bike, but luckily he doesn't hurt Preston. Now, Butch ends up coming back to the scene because he sees what happens to Preston. And he's trying to bribe Quigley to say, oh, well, I didn't see anything, but at the right cost, right? And Quigley's like, I'm not even paying attention to this kid because, he's talking to Preston. He's like, you're okay, right? And so then a crowd starts forming. This one lady even comes over. She's worried about Preston, oh my God, are you okay? So in order for Quigley to not look like the bad guy, he begins to write Preston a check. Now, as he's writing him a check, he realizes he sees a police car pull in towards them. So he's like, okay, kid, here. Your dad don't know what to do with this. So he had signed the check. He just didn't write anything on there. So this goes back to earlier. Preston knows when you at least got a signature, you can write in any amount you want. So of course this kid's gonna totally take advantage of this moment. How many moments will he come across with a blank check with someone's signature on it, right? So he ends up writing on this check $1 million. What's the odds? Quigley had $1 million that he hid away, and then Preston wants $1 million. So he ends up, because he's really smart with the computer that his brothers got. So the brothers have a computer they can't even use, right? And Preston knows how to use it. So he figures it out. He ends up getting typing out where he can copy, the amount of the money on the check, because he knows his own handwriting is not going to do. So then the next day he goes up to the bank and he hands the teller the check to say, hey, I want to cash this. And she ends up taking him back to Mr. Bitterman's office to be like, hey, this kid is trying to, cash this check. Now, mind you, Quigley said he was going to have a man named Juice come up there. Well, he didn't say man. He just said a person named Juice is going to come up here. So Bitterman thinks that, okay, there's a check with Quigley's signature. It has the $1 million amount. This has to be Juice. And then to make it, I guess, less conspicuous, having a kid come and get it. So Bitterman thinks that he's giving the money to Juice. Okay? The actual Juice shows up. When he shows up, he ends up going to the back of Bitterman's office right as Preston is leaving. And he's like, hey, I'm Juice. I need to cash this $1 million check. And then Bitterman realizes he made a terrible mistake. He thought the kid, because everything was just so smooth. You would have thought, okay, yeah, he got the check with Quigley's signature. He asked the kid, he goes, Juice? And the kid's like, not thirsty. And he's like, he says something like, you ran into Quigley? And he goes, he ran into me. So it's they're talking about two different things, but it's this kid is actually kind of smooth. I'm not thirsty because that's my name. Whatever. So the Preston ends up getting all this money, making all of his dreams come true. He had a list of things that he wanted to achieve, and one of them was getting a house. There's this castle next door that's for sale. He ends up going in a bidding war with Quigley, and mind you, Quigley doesn't know this is the kid or that he has his money yet, because he's using the computer to talk through the phone with an adult robotic voice. Then he ends up creating this character named Macintosh, who supposedly has all of this money, and he's doing basically all his bidding and financial work for him, getting him all these things, riding in limos, taking this girl on a date that ends up turning out to be an FBI agent who's trying to investigate this legal activity possibly that's going on with this bank. And then she ends up, her target becomes Macintosh, this guy with all this money that no one's ever seen. So yeah, this is definitely a fun movie to watch, especially with the family. Just a little trivia: the amusement park is Six Flags Fiesta Texas in San Antonio. I thought that was super cool. Super cool that they used an amusement park in Texas. I think it's like the second movie that's done this, maybe more. But yeah, it's cool. And it's basically just, to me, this movie is a good lesson to show the grass isn't greener on the other side. When you think things are better than what they could be, you just realize that, not everything is what it seems to be, or not everything is cracked up what it is to be. So this movie is definitely it has a good lesson to it, a good message. All right, let's get into this second movie here. Lights, camera, action. I'm big, you're small. I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm right, you're wrong. And there is nothing you can do about it. That is a quote from Mr. Wormwood in the movie Matilda. Who remembers Matilda, okay? This movie was released August 2nd, 1996. This movie has approached its 24th anniversary this month, okay? All right, so the writer of this movie, well, firstly, this movie was a book, and it was written by Roald Dahl, but the actual screenwriters are Nicholas Kazan and Robin Sweetcord. And the director is actually Danny DeVito, who actually stars in the movie as well. Danny DeVito, he has a big resume, okay? He has a long resume. But 2 movies he played in. He was in Twins, Batman Returns, Junior, just in a bunch of stuff, okay? And I didn't even realize originally that he directed this movie, but that was super cool. We have Mara Wilson, who plays Matilda. She was also Mrs. Doubtfire, which I talked about in episode 4, the Father's Day episode. And Mrs. Doubtfire, I believe, was her acting debut. That was the first movie she was in. And then also was in Miracle on 34th Street. Then we have Rhea Perlman, who plays Mrs. Wormwood. She was in the show Cheers, also in Canadian Bacon. We have Beth Davids, who played Miss Honey. She was in Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams, Army of Darkness. We have Pam Ferris, who plays Miss Trunchbull. She played in Death to Smoochie. And then we have Paul Rubens, who plays an FBI agent. We know him from Pee-wee's Playhouse. I know him from the movie Mystery Man, which is another movie I'm going to do later in another episode. And then we have Tracy Walter, who plays an FBI agent as well. And he was in Batman, the original Batman, and City Slickers. Okay, so Matilda was not cared about from the start, okay? And Matilda is the, leading little girl in this movie. And her parents absolutely did not care about her. Because literally when she was born, her parents, instead of loving on her, being excited about her being there, they complained about the hospital bill. They complained about just every little thing that happened to them. Oh, it hurt when she came out. Oh, we got to pay this bill. Oh, woe is me. Like, just complained about everything. They weren't even happy about having a little girl. But luckily, Matilda is a super smart, talented girl who, at an early age, learned to take care of herself. At 2 years old, she was dressing herself. She was doing her own hair, even making her own food, because her parents would leave her at home alone. So mind you, the dad, Mr. Wormwood, he would go off to work at a dealership where he was ripping people off, like basically, rigging these cars to work just enough for them to go off the lot. But of course, they were no good, and he was completely upselling them for way more than what they were worth. And then the mom would just go off to play bingo. And they would just leave their, Matilda at home. Like, really? And this is another reason as to why Mr. Wormwood was, on the list of, worst parents, okay? So, all right, where were we? So, yeah, Matilda's doing everything on her own, and she's very opposite from her family because she does have she has one other sibling, and then, her two parents, and they're only interested in, kind of they're selfish, they care, they just want to watch TV, they don't really, they just are very just simple-minded people, and they're only out to help themselves. But Matilda is, she cares about other people. She likes talking with other people. She also loves to read, and she starts doing that in an early age. And actually what happens is she figures out how to get to the library, which is 10 blocks from where she lives. And she manages to get to the library and get back from the library safely. And she ends up doing it every time her mom leaves to bingo. She ends up going to the library by herself. So, I again, another point to speak to how much her parents did not care about her. They don't even remember her age. At one point, the dad is thinking that she's 4 years old, and Matilda is trying to tell him, "No, Dad, I'm 6 years old." And he was like, "Well, if you were 6, then you should be in school by now." And she goes, "Well, I was supposed to start school in September, and I told you about that, but you said you didn't care." And then she brings up the subject I do actually want to go to school. I want to learn. And the dad just still brushes her off because initially he doesn't even believe that she's 6. But then when he figures out that she actually is 6, he still doesn't care. And once again, Matilda is a super smart girl. And not only is she super smart for her age, but she also has a power. She has telekinesis, where she can actually control objects around her and even people somewhat. When she first realizes this power, it's in the moment where the dad is basically, he's upset, and he's trying to tell the family, I run what happens in this house. Everybody's going to do what I say. And they're all sitting around watching TV, and Matilda wants to read a book. But the dad is like, "No, you're not going to read, you're going to watch TV." And as he's making her watch this, kind of goofy television show where it's about this guy who they drench in honey, he was in this glass case that was filled with money. And wind, where he has to try to catch all this money. And, this is making her cringe. She's not enjoying it at all. And as she continues to look at the TV ends up exploding. And initially she doesn't realize that it's her that does it, because it's kind of coincidence, because she didn't physically do anything to it. So how could she do it? But this was this is the first look into her powers. So then there is a principal comes up to Mr. Wormwood's dealership, and as he's talking to this principal, she lets him know that she works at this elementary school, and she says her motto, which is use the rod, beat the child. And the saying is supposed to be spare the rod, spoil the child. And so she talks about basically how she keeps her kids in line by disciplining them. And this interests Mr. Wormwood, because he goes, "Okay, well, he can, I like her. She likes the discipline. She doesn't really like children. So let me send my child to her school." And when she goes to the school, well, initially, Matilda's super excited to go to the school because, one, she doesn't even know what she's getting herself into, but the fact she gets to go to school, she's excited. Now, when they get to the school looks like a prison. It's run down. There's no grass. It's all dirt. It just looks very ran down and not bright, And so this doesn't deter Matilda, because she's I finally have kids that I can interact with. And also she'll get to learn, which is what she really wants to do. Now, when we meet this principal again, we see how she interacts with the kids, which is with a very like stern hand, and you could tell everybody fears her. Like kids are trying to hide, and all the kids, like as soon as she comes out, like they stop talking, and it's just, I mean, it's really bad. And so, you know, there's this horrible principal, but the good side of it is her actual teacher. Her name is Miss Honey. She is very sweet. You can tell she cares about the kids, and she loves her job. She loves teaching. She loves children. So then Matilda and Miss Honey, they actually grow a bond, and it's at school where Matilda can truly be herself. And Miss Honey embraces her. And even at one point, she realizes Matilda has powers. That doesn't scare her away. That doesn't make her treat her any differently. That just really makes her connect with her because she knows how special Matilda is. And then just, you know, furthermore in the movie, it's just her, you know, navigating this horrible parents, the horrible principal, but then also getting some sort of, you know, solace or protection whenever she is around Miss Honey, who they just get along very well. And this movie is just super cute. I love this movie so much. It was a movie I grew up with. It's a movie like I could still watch today and definitely enjoy it. Now, some standout scenes in this movie. I like when she has full on realized her powers, right? And she knows how to control them. And so there's a song called Little Bitty Pretty One. Let me see who that's by. Little bitty pretty one, you know you sound so sweet. And this is by Thurston Harris. And then it looks like, well, hold on. I want to say it goes by Thurston Harris, and then Frankie Lyman had he had like did a remake of the song. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just kind of looking at it at like just face value here. But yeah, Frankie Lyman may have like revamped it. But anyways, and so in this scene, she's making like everything in the house move. They're moving in the directions that she wants them to move. She's like dancing, and it's super cute. And there was actually a challenge just last year where a bunch of just different people were reenacting that scene. So like they would go in their house, and of course they would have someone like off camera and stuff holding brooms, making a move, turning on and off lights, and then they were just dancing to that particular song, right? I wanted to do that challenge, but I never did it, but I thought that was super cute. So if you did see that last year and you was like, where did they get that from? This is the movie that they got it from, okay? There's another scene where Miss Trunchbull, she realizes that a cake or a piece of cake that she had been eaten or munched on, and she thinks it's this one student, right? Like, of course, blame the chubby kid. He ate your cake, right? So she blames this kid eating her cake, and as punishment, she makes him eat like a big slice of cake, right? And so what kid would not want to eat chocolate cake, right? So she makes him eat this big slice of cake. You know, he kind of pushes through. I mean, it's not too much, but it's enough that, okay, one slice of that would be good enough. But after he finishes that one slice, she brings out a whole cake. I mean, this is probably like, oh my gosh, multiple layer cake. I mean, it's a pretty big cake for one person, and she makes him eat all of that. And it's funny because at one point all of the kids start like cheering him on, and of course Miss Trunchbull doesn't like when kids are working together or enjoying themselves, and so it makes her angry. But that's a very popular scene in this movie. I think if anyone does remember anything from this movie, they remember that chocolate cake scene. Please excuse if you hear this like kind of rattling noise in the background. I promise you, I'm not like sitting in my room with like a bunch of rattlesnakes or anything. I don't know what those bugs are called, but there's those bugs outside where it makes that sound. And yeah, I'm like, how convenient, right? Right when I'm recording this, that's when y'all want to make all that noise. But anyway, so yeah, if you hear them in the background, that's why. All right, moving on. So another scene that I love in this movie is there's this one little girl, and she has these pigtails, and she's a new student. And so you can tell Miss Trunchbull, she likes to focus, or she likes to prey on newer students. So she ends up telling this girl, because she has pigtails in her hair, she's like, you need to take your pigtails out. Well, she first kind of antagonized her and like, who did your hair? And she's like, my mom. And then she's just like, well, take it out. And the little girl's like, well, I like it. Or she says something to that effect. And basically, she doesn't like the fact that the little girl is responding to her instead of like doing exactly what she wants her to do. So she ends up grabbing the girl by her pigtail, swinging her around, like throwing her in the air, and the little girl is almost about to land like on this spiky fence until Matilda actually controls her to fall in this field of flowers instead. And so of course, all the kids get happy because she ends up landing safely. But of course, this upsets Miss Trunchbull. And this was another part of the movie where Matilda is starting to realize her power, because she willed her to land safely instead of, to be hurt. Okay, the last scene I love in this movie was when Matilda, she shows that she can do mental math super fast. Like, as soon as you finish saying the numbers, she got the answer. And in this scene, basically the dad is telling the son, like, one day you're gonna work for me, and you're gonna have to do what I do. So let's start somewhere. I'm gonna give you the amount that I'm going to give you the amount that I personally paid for the car, and then I'm going to tell you how much I upsold it for, and then you're going to tell me what profit I end up getting off all these cars. And the son's writing it down. At one point, the son even tells him, like, slow down, like, I can't write it all down, like, with how fast you're saying. But then the dad's like, no, just do it. Just write it down. And then as soon as he finishes running off the numbers, Matilda already has the answer. And then dad doesn't believe her. He thinks that she looked at the paper. She's like, how can I see the paper from all the way over here? Because she was literally like across the table from them. I wish I could do mental math that fast, but I still have to write stuff down. I have to physically see stuff to understand it. I can't just mentally do it, y'all. I'm crazy. All right, so some trivia here. This was sad. Mara Wilson's mom had breast cancer while she was filming the movie. And then before the movie was released, she actually died. That's super sad because Mara was super young when this movie came out. So the fact that she lost her mommy at a young age, I couldn't imagine the feeling. But definitely my heart goes out to her. Now, contrast to Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman's characters, they became very close to Mara Wilson during production. And according to Wilson, DeVito and Perlman would often let her stay at their home and keep her entertained while her father was working and while her mother was in the hospital receiving cancer treatment. So they were super nice to her. I love that. I love the thought that, it's funny. We see the movie, we think they're terrible people, but of course, in real life, they end up just being, absolute sweethearts and embraced and took her in. Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman are married in real life. I hope they're still married. I think they're still married. Then we have Matilda. Well, like I mentioned earlier, Matilda is a book that they based this movie off, and it was published in 1988. In 1990, so this was 88, 89. So only 2 years after the book was published, they actually turned this into a musical. And it was produced by the Redgrave Theatre in Farnham in England. And you know what? That is actually all that I got for that movie. And for all of the movies for this episode. Now, I hope y'all enjoyed this first edition for this little series that we're going to be doing for the next couple episodes. And you know what? The credits are rolling. The show is over. And y'all know what time it is. Well, it's time that I will see y'all at the next showtime.